our discussion, what I've just been titling Playing God and Destroying Women. And but to start off, I wanted to actually show a quick, I think it's about an 18, might be a 20-minute video to just kind of kick things off. And so while you're kind of settling in, we'll just watch this, and then we'll get into our discussion this morning.
This is Curtis, and he's going to pull me through. Okay, Curtis. Pull me, Curtis, pull! Pull!
I really am sad that I took my voice for granted. Like, I didn't just take it for granted, I hated it. And now, I would do anything to have that voice again.
What's so funny, Daisy?
I'll back out with you later, okay? Say hi, Mom. Our goal here is to offer gender-affirming
There
therapy.
is a substantial body of research that shows these treatments
Treatment for
work.
gender dysphoria is proven to be life-saving medical care.
It really comes down to how uncomfortable with their body
Deciding
shapes
to permanently alter the body.
and they want to change those body shapes.
There for their key transition. Nobody.
It's not children who have already been victimized by these barbaric suicides.
Ridiculous.
My childhood was ruined. This needs to stop.
I had an alter ego, and he was like this boy that I customized in my mind of the ideal boy. Other girls looked so different than I did. They were, expressing themselves very differently.
Hey guys, so for today.
I was depressed, hopeless, and I was feeling pretty dejected and scared and alone. I didn't like life. I just wanted to stay in my room all day. As you spiral into depression, it really feels like you're in a hole that is so infinitely deep, and the depression just was really debilitating in that I didn't really care about
Self-worth is not a real thing.
improving myself because I already felt like I was just I shouldn't have been born. Just having really dark thoughts. I always just felt very much like there was just something wrong with me, and I was just trying to figure it out, and I used the internet to help me do that. That's where I felt like I could diagnose myself. My favorite websites were YouTube and Tumblr. It's such a huge amount of content that I consumed at that time. I mean, I watched a lot of trans people. I watched a lot of, gender transformation videos, and saw these people really just go from female to male, visually. They looked like men, and I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that it was possible for a woman to pass as a man that well. It's really dark when you think about it, because the people who are consuming this are children, 13, 14, 15 years old, and it's so easy for them to literally be groomed. I just started looking into all of it. I was like, oh, there's gender queer, gender fluid, agender, there's you can be a demi-girl, which is when you're 90% girl, 10% not girl. There's just an infinite amount of ways that you can interpret and express your own gender identity, and your gender identity is who you are, and nobody gets to take that away from you. So hearing that, I just became very, very interested in having a male persona. The more time I spent online, the more it felt like real life, and the more real it felt, which eventually led to me just fully transitioning. So I came out to my parents as Ollie, and I went to this, behavioral mental health clinic for 6 days, they had a meeting with my parents, and they basically told my parents that if you don't validate Oliver, if you don't validate him, then this is just going to get worse. The best thing that you can do to help him is to accept him as your son. But I already felt like I wasn't what my mom had expected, and for me, transitioning was the closest I could come to killing myself without actually doing it. With all of these mental struggles that I was having, not knowing how to make sense of it on my own, and consuming so much of the trans narrative, and just loving life, hearing people say this made me so much happier, this alleviated my pain. I wanted to alleviate my pain. I also didn't want to be who I was. So, with transitioning, I could do both of those things. I could alleviate my pain and I could become someone else. I wanted to escape my own identity as Daisy.
My name is Ali Chadra, and this is my voice. One day before testosterone.
That was really the beginning. I wasn't just playing around anymore. I wasn't just playing dress up anymore. Like I was actually going to become a trans man and live my life that way.
Culturally, we are Mexican, and men have to be very masculine in our culture. And I wasn't the most masculine growing up, and I think that had a part on everything that eventually led me to do what I did. It was around middle school. I was surfing YouTube one day, and a video popped up, male to female, and that eventually planted the seeds of doubt and allowed me to be caught by the ideology that eventually led me to hurt myself. Eventually, I just wanted an answer to be given to me on who I was, and I went to see a therapist, and I had only asked, I think I might be trans, I don't know, I want to know. The therapist, immediately on my first appointment with her, said, yes, I am a transgender woman. She had my letter to transition the same appointment. After that, I just took everything slowly. But eventually my father found out what I was doing. And due to our culture, he was not happy. And he took me to Mexico and had me have sexual relationship against my will with a prostitute. I was a 19-year-old kid, and my father told the prostitute, take good care of him, it's his first time. He was trying to prove that I was a man. That broke me, obviously. After that, I go back to the therapist and told her I wanted to transition. And she recommended I start my social and medical intervention as soon as I can. 11 months after I had started hormones, I was transferred to another medical professional who, after speaking with him for one time only, he approved me for surgery. And a few weeks after that session, I get 2 letters from my insurance approving me for surgery. But I was a little surprised that I received my letter for bottom surgery, which was removal of my genitals without even asking.
My name is Ali Chadra. This is my voice, pre-T. My name is Ali Chadra, and this is my voice, 1 month on T.
2 days ago was my official 3 months on testosterone. This is my voice, 4 months on T. It's probably not really a good thing that I was able to get my hormones so easily. I mean, anyone can go in there Not only did they send me home with the hormones, but I actually did my very first shot right there in the doctor's office, and I was just euphoric, and it was real, and I was actually going to start seeing changes, and I was going to start passing, which basically meant that everyone around me was going to see me as a boy, an actual boy. This feels good. This makes me happy. I'm actually feeling the feelings that, you know, all those like trans people online were saying that they felt.
I just want to say that I'm literally so happy with my chest. It's so much better than I thought it would be.
Seemingly out of nowhere, we've suddenly seen a huge spike in media depictions and social media depictions of transgenderism. It's even reached the mainstream advertising world. And I think this is all coming to a head and what this really means for our society. In cases like the case of Layla Jane, a young girl whose breasts were removed at age 13 by doctors who fed her a lie.
Take this next case. Layla Jane was born a girl.
Layla Jane experienced a host of medical issues in her youth. Her mother, who is bipolar, expressed to these physicians and therapists that her daughter might be bipolar, but she actually never received any diagnosis or treatment for that. The family went to one physician who, after less than a 2-hour appointment, green-lighted the hormone therapy, and in a similarly or even shorter period of time, a plastic surgeon signed off after one visit on removing her breasts. Like most young women who go down this path of identifying transgenderism as the solution to their problems, reinforced by irresponsible medical care providers, it's likely that if physicians had properly diagnosed all of the issues present in Layla Jane as a child, she would never have gone down this path.
When parents of trans-identified kids are referred to specialized gender clinics, they're often told that they're going to get comprehensive, multidisciplinary mental health assessments. We know that that's not true. In practice, these kids were put on a fast track to medical transition.
Layla is now 18 and is fighting back. So this does not happen to anyone else.
My name is Prisha Mosley. I was a 15-year-old girl when the trans community found me. Already diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses, including anorexia, a body dysmorphic disorder, and borderline personality disorder, a trauma disorder, I was easy to manipulate and convince that I had been born in the wrong body. I was told that this was the reason for all of my mental and emotional distress.
The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? This is the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care.
But is this the document we're talking about? You needed this letter signed by a therapist to open up the door for you to get this medical treatment. Is this the document that we're talking about earlier?
Yes, it is.
And it took you how long to get this?
30 minutes.
The ideology that has become dominant at these clinics is that trans kids know who they are, and therefore to question them, to ask basic therapeutic questions like, could your gender dysphoria or gender identity have been triggered by some other event in your life? Basic questions of screening are completely taboo in these circles. But the truth is that parents don't have much of a choice in the matter. And doctors are telling parents in front of their distressed children, if you don't consent to the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, your child is going to die by suicide. I believe that most doctors who practice gender-affirming medicine,
Gender dysphoria,
they genuinely, sincerely believe that they're doing good, but they're not.
Sweden, France, Norway, and the UK are reversing course and asking questions.
There are not found enough medical evidence, psychological evidence, to support transgender therapy.
In the UK, their only national gender clinic for children shut down last year by court order. What do their doctors know that our doctors don't?
Part of the problem is that the current cohort of teenagers that are being transitioned under the affirmative protocol, which lacks guardrails, which takes kids at their word when they say I'm trans, which doesn't do proper mental health assessments. In fact, double mastectomies on teenage girls went up 13-fold between 2013 and 2020. Between 2016 and 2019 alone, these procedures went up by 500%. A study published in 2022 by researchers who are advocates of gender-affirming surgeries showed that the youngest patient to have received a radical bilateral mastectomy in the United States is 12 years old. These kids are going to grow up and they're going to start to feel the full effects of their medical decisions. They're going to start to feel the side effects. If you really want to know whether amputating the breasts of a 12 or 13-year-old girl is ultimately in her best long-term interest, ask her when she's 30 or 40 and unable to breastfeed her own child.
I would go out into the world, and everyone's calling me Ollie. Everyone sees me as a guy. But then, at the end of the day, when I'm home, in my room, looking in the mirror, I'm like, what did I do? Like, I start getting these, like, really scary thoughts of, like, you're incomplete. You're not a guy. You never will be. But even though you're legally, your driver's license says you're a guy, you know you're not. You finally have expressed your true inner self or whatever, the thing that you wanted to do so badly ever since you were like 13, 14 years old. Did this thing to alleviate this gender dysphoria, that wasn't there before, but you made it into a problem, and now your body image issues are worse. That's not supposed to happen. What do we do now?
I just woke up one day, looked at myself in the mirror, and asked myself, what the heck am I doing? Because I realized no matter if I would have gotten every surgery, continue with hormones, I realized I would have never been a woman. At best, I would have been a caricature of what I believed a woman was. Nobody would help me because they had more concerns of me reversing everything. I just socially detransitioned, got the implant removed, so I had technically developed gynecomastia. My chest is not like it used to be, and it never will. I have scarring, numbness, and unfortunately my nipples are completely different. And to put it lightly, has been taking a major toll on me since I've realized what I've done.
I was almost 5 years on testosterone, so if I had gone further, I wouldn't have been able to go back. When I found out I was pregnant, I was just over the moon. I mean, I was scared I was going to have a doctor tell me that, like, sorry, you're infertile, and it would have been my fault. There are so many young people who are going through very similar things that I did, and are still being told that transition will save them, and it's just not true. My story is tragic in some ways, but it's very redemptive in many ways. That cannot be said for many detransitioners. And that's just heartbreaking. Like, I can't imagine living with that. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like to regret a bottom surgery, or, to be infertile, because when you were a little child, like 12, your, parents were manipulated into putting you, like, blocking your puberty.
Being so young, I was so impressionable. I was told so many times, it's possible that you're trans, it's possible that you're trans, that eventually I started to believe it.
Unfortunately, transition made things worse for me.
It has just kind of wrecked my perception of myself, and I feel like I missed out on like 3 years of my life. I missed out on 3 years of living my teenage girlhood.
I didn't realize that there were women like me who were different.
So, here's the deal. I'm detransitioning. It's true, it's not a joke.
I understand now that I can be a cis woman again. I haven't gone too far. I haven't passed the point of no return. I can live as a woman again.
I was something because people were reacting to me, but it was a me that wasn't really me, so I was protected. I was protecting myself with the trans label.
These pediatric clinics that perform these surgeries, they will do nothing to help these teens if they decide to detransition. There's nothing you can do. Once you've taken all those hormones, Billy, your body is changed beyond repair.
You don't have to remove your body parts to make you complete. When I transitioned, my suicidal ideation did not go away.
Transition is not the only answer, and there are many detransitioners like me out there.
My name is Camille People.
My name is Emily. My name is Laura Becker.
My name is Eva Garcia, and I'm a detransitioner.
My name is Daisy, and I'm a woman.
Apologize. First time I watched that, it was, I don't know. It was, I don't know what the right word is, but it was very emotional for me, and still is. I think of, imagine if these people were your brother, or your sister, or your son, or your daughter, I just think of how they're struggling, how they so desperately need help. And our society is, as they just described, not giving them help. They're doing the opposite. And I don't know, it makes me sad. It makes me sad. Parents, I just want to say quickly, if you have kids and you are not watching what they're doing on the internet, I hope you notice the theme here. That they're saying, I just started watching YouTube. Well, there's nothing wrong with YouTube. It's innocuous enough. There's nothing to worry about. There's no, it's just kids programs. Well, it's out there. It's everywhere. If you're not talking to your kids about this stuff, they are going to hear it from somebody else. And unfortunately, in the state of Washington, they could talk to a teacher or a counselor or some other professional, and they won't even tell you that they're having those conversations. I found it interesting that she said that when she was online, the more she spent time online, the more it felt like it was real. How the feelings took over. Yeah. Not what was objectively true, but the feelings. And she said, transitioning for me was as close as I could come to suicide without killing myself. I wish we could make a bulletin board that said that, because that is not help, right? That is not gender affirming care. That is somebody saying, I'm doing what you're telling me to do, and all it felt like was I was essentially killing myself without killing myself. So, the other thing she said that struck me was, once I started taking all these testosterone and puberty blockers and trying to transition into this malehood, I wasn't playing dress up anymore. It's very interesting, the terms that she was using. She was just being very frank and very authentic and very, very true with what she was actually feeling and knew to be true. I was playing dress up, pretending to be a boy. And when I'm home alone by myself and nobody else is around, I knew in the bottom of my heart I was a girl. And I would never be a boy. Last week we began this discussion on the impact of these kind of agendas and destructive ideologies that they're having on society right now, especially on kids and women, and how we as Christians should respond. And I just wanted to review a couple of quick things from last week's discussion. Number one, as a follower of Jesus Christ, if we call ourselves his active disciples, then we should always hold the Word of God as the final line of truth for everything that we see in our culture. Always. Even if that truth is seen as being bigoted, hateful, misogynistic, I don't know, or whatever the terms they want to throw at you, reprehensible. Number two, God tells us in the Old and New Testament that there is a truth about humanity, that there's males and that there's females. And just because the culture tells us that gender is a construct, and there's intersex and agender and amalgagender and androgynous and bigender and demigender and gender fluid and gender queer and neutroid and non-binary and pangender and third sex and transsexual and two-spirit or X or even unspecified, all they're really doing is just making up words. You're saying that something is true, but you're not providing anything of evidentiary value to show that it is. Just making up words to say that what you're saying is true. Number three, there's no such thing as a transgender human being. And why is that? Because Mark's a hateful, bigoted person? No. Because God says so. It's just that simple. Don't hate anybody. But there's just no such thing as a transgender person. It's a made-up word for a made-up identity. It doesn't actually exist in reality, just like Holly told us in the video. And so as Christians, if you call yourself a disciple of Christ, and if somebody asks me, Mark, do you think that transgenders are a real identity? I'm going to have to say no. Not because I hate somebody, but because I want them to know the truth. There's males and females. And nothing will ever change that. No matter the amount of rhetoric, purely from what God has actually said, especially in his word, and declared not just through his voice and the voice of his prophets, but what Jesus also declared. Unequivocally. There's males and females. It's the way I made them. That's it. Number four, Christians should choose to live in reality, I think. I think we should choose to fully embrace reality, especially in these times and seasons, when so many people are trying to drag us into non-reality. We should live not by lies. Number five, Christians should love their neighbors as themselves and think of others more highly than they think of themselves and speak the truth with love. And so if I've got a daughter, if I've got a niece, if I've got an aunt, if I've got a grandmother, if I've got a neighbor who's suffering from depression and hopelessness and doesn't know what to do with themselves and doesn't even feel like themselves, I should care enough to actually love them. You're supposed to love other people, and real love is expressed when you tell the truth, not when you join them in their delusion and lie to them. That's not real love. It's so crazy to me that if I had a friend that was a cocaine addict and came to me for help, I wouldn't look them in the face and say, don't worry about it. Keep using cocaine. It'll make your life better. It's so crazy to me that if I had a relative that was an alcoholic and they came to me looking for advice and they said, what should I do? And I said, just keep drinking. It'll fix things. Why would I lie to them like that? And so if they came to me and said, I've been born a female, but I feel like a male and I'm suffering with hopelessness and depression and I really need some help and I'm not feeling mentally right, why would I look them in the face and say, you're right, you're not a female? It's not love. And this is why 30 stinking years now of hard, unbiased, objective data from the nation of Sweden, which is, by the way, a very friendly LGBT and gender transforming community and nation. They've got 30 stinking years of hard data now that they've tracked on purpose for every single person that's ever undergone one of these transgender surgeries. And you know what the data's showing us? Once you have that surgery, the likelihood of you committing suicide increases 20 times. You literally become 20 times more likely to kill yourself after you've done the thing that they say is going to fix your life. And of course, ultimately, this road leads to what I've been calling the destruction of women. It literally reduces womanhood to a cartoon caricature of its former self, and it turns women into meaningless, undefined, non-unique physical entities that have no distinction, no distinctives, no intrinsic value or identity whatsoever. But the truth is, women are not simply a meaningless caricature of society's imaginative construction. They bear the unique image of God and have been purposely crafted and created by Him. And they do have a distinct and unique and intrinsic value that's different from their male counterparts. And society doesn't get to play God and state, I'm just as crafty and I'm just as creative, I'm just as intelligent as God is, so get over here, here's a little lipstick. We'll kind of chop this and chop that, put on this dress, here's some high heels, we'll change your voice, and voila, just like God, I have created woman. No, you haven't. It's not how it works. I'm so grateful that this election cycle seems to be showing us that people in this nation are waking up. It saddens me to think that here in my state we aren't, apparently. But it's high time that Christians out in the real world start actually speaking the truth. It's high time that if you're a Christian mental health worker, you tell people the truth. It's high time if you're a Christian doctor that you start telling people the truth. It's high time that if you're a Christian within the church house, you tell people the truth. God made them, and He made them male and female, and that's it. As we continue our discussion today, I'd like us to just stop for a moment and see what God actually says about women. Here's Proverbs chapter 31. I know it's a famous passage of Scripture. Some of you could probably quote it. Starting in verse 10, it says, "An excellent wife, who can find her?" I think of that Holly gal saying, when I found out I was pregnant, I was so relieved. I hadn't destroyed my physical body so much that I was infertile. Thank God. For her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and linen and works with her hands and delight. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar, and she rises while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her attendants. And you skip to verse 25. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She watches over the activities of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband also. And he praises her, saying, "Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all." Husbands, don't forget to bless your wife. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. You know, the feminist movement has stated for over 5 decades now that it is striving to fortify women and to give them the recognition and empowerment that they need to flourish in society and have all the same rights and opportunities that men have. But is that the outcome that we've seen? Is that the results in real time that we're experiencing with regard to women? For instance, how does it fortify and empower and provide special recognition for women if you tell them that they're so inept, they're so incapable, they're so lackluster in their performance that when you try and name Woman of the Year, you have to name a man? In other words, listen up, women. In the whole entire nation, we couldn't find one single woman who had done so much with her life and efforts and place and position out in the streets of America to stand out as being exceptional. We named a man Woman of the Year. Just think how much of a slap in the face of women that is. Especially women who are raising 3, 4, maybe 5 kids, sacrificing their stinking life on a day-to-day basis, to bathe them and dress them and feed them and make sure they're educated and nourished with some good old-fashioned, let's call it motherly love. Sacrificing their time and their talents and their treasure, putting their life on hold to raise their offspring. But you reward a man. Or women who excel in their particular sport and put in month after month after month of hard work and training, and they're out there winning medals and trophies and just grinding it out to get to the top of their game. And you award a man. Women who've hit the books and studied their brains out and become the first female in their family to not just earn a college degree, but maybe even to start their own business. Or become the first doctor in their family, or open their own law firm, or maybe even their own medical practice, and you ignore them, and you celebrate a man who thinks that lipstick, a dress, a little bit of silicone, and some high heels makes him Woman of the Year. If you ask me, that's pathetic. Women should never be denigrated and disparaged and reduced to this ideological movement and misguided conception. Ever. And so the feminist movement isn't actually helping women, it's destroying them. And the woke ideology that has infiltrated the ranks of the feminist movement and completely taken over, continually attempting to infiltrate every facet of human existence, isn't helping to solidify and empower and bolster women. It's actually ruining and obliterating the very core of what it means to be a woman. And if this broken, make-believe, damaging philosophy and purported sacrosanct ideology is allowed to run its full course, it will destroy women. It will, in fact, be the end of women. The world is continually throwing in the faces of our women and our mothers and our daughters and our sisters and even our granddaughters that they only have value if they're drop-dead gorgeous and don't weigh too much and wear skin-tight, skimpy clothing that makes sure to accentuate all the right curves and places so they can flaunt themselves to the world every chance they get. Or they say they've only got value if they can sing or they can dance because, women are only here to entertain us, to twerk and shake their booty for our enjoyment. After all, women really are only here for our pleasure, not for their own. Oh, but don't you dare objectify women. Women are only valuable if they are powerful career women who've shown the whole world that they don't need a man, or they don't need children, or they don't need a family, they don't need anyone or anything trying to hold them back because they're a self-made woman, and they're showing the corporate world and CEOs and industry leaders and business owners that they're the kinds of movers and shakers that are just as capable as men. And worst of all, they tell women they only have value if they actually deny their own womanhood, chop off some body parts, ignore their own biology, start a TikTok channel, cut off their hair, boast about how many abortions they've had, and pretend to be a man. Again, this kind of woke feminism is literally leading to the destruction of women. But God has a completely different view of women. God actually values them. God actually values women. And so should we. He doesn't want them to be ruined and denigrated, over-sexualized, or destroyed. He wants them to be loved and cherished and recognized for the unique and special gift that they really are to humanity. After all, the scriptures aren't just talking to men when it says, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. God values both the roles of men and women. Just like Paul said in 1 Corinthians, and nevertheless in the Lord, woman is not independent of man, nor man of woman. For as woman was made from man, so too now man is born of woman, and all things are from God. And if you've ever had the pleasure of being around or even married to a good woman, you recognize her value, just like Peter did when he said, don't let your adorning be merely external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing you wear. Rather, let your adorning be hidden person of the heart. Let it be the hidden person of your heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. I think we could take a poll of all the men in this nation and ask them, would you rather have a chick that's a 10 on the scale of beauty, but a just horrible person to be around for the rest of your life? No, thank you. So grateful I'm married to a woman who within the hidden person of her heart is a woman, a godly woman, a blessing to me and to all the others around her, a blessing to her kids, a blessing to her grandkids, a blessing to her community. She's got value. The secular progressives right now are just hell-bent on destroying and depressing, denigrating women, but God is always, and always has been, interested in valuing women, wanting us to see how precious and unique and truly valuable they really are. But the progressives aren't interested in valuing women, they're simply interested in agenda. And what's the result? They don't actually care. Just look at what's going on. They don't actually care about the individual. Because as soon as that individual, as we just saw in the video, says, I'm going to detransition, they kick them out in the garbage. You no longer want to follow the agenda? You don't want to toe the line the way we want you to? We don't actually care about you. We were just using you to push our own ideology. And as soon as you sway away from that ideology, you're nothing to us. You're nothing to us. The results in society of this kind of nonsensical, damaging junk is seen in spades right now. Do you know here in the U.S. we now have nearly 1 out of every 4 women on some kind of antidepressant? 25% of our female population is taking an antidepressant. Should we care about that? That's a rate that is 2.5 times that of their male counterparts. Antidepressant use and prescriptions have literally gone up 400% in this nation since the 2000s. A new 2020 Pew Research study revealed that over half of all white liberal women under the age of 30 have been diagnosed with a mental health condition at some point in their life. Over 50% of all women under the age of 30 have been diagnosed with some sort of mental health. The saddest of all in my mind is that women aged 60 and over are now the highest users of antidepressants in the U.S. Why? Gee, I don't know why. If you tell women they're nothing, they have no value except for certain reasons, and now they reach into their 60s and their body's aging and also not as pretty as they used to be, and you tell them, well then you have no value to us. Gee, I wonder why they're depressed. All these women so stinking depressed if the women's rights movement supposedly has actually empowered them. If this woke feminism movement for 50 plus years has actually lifted women up and exalted them in society, where in the world is all this depression coming from? It's just incredible to contemplate and consider when right now in our nation's history we're living in the days and times where a woman has more rights and more opportunities and more potential recognition than any other time in our nation's history. There's a ton of scholarships available for women to be educated, a ton of grants for them to open a business, a plethora of career fields that are available for them for the first time, unbridled access to free health care and abortion on demand and unfettered women's rights, and abundance of succulent food at their fingertips so they can be healthy at any size, and the ability to open their OnlyFans account if they want to, and shake their body in front of people and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why in the world are you so depressed? I mean, according to what the world is telling women on a daily basis, I'm like, what in the world do you have to be depressed about? Which leads me to think, is it possible? I mean, is there any possibility whatsoever, however minute, that maybe, just maybe, the stuff they're telling women isn't actually true? Isn't actually working? And it's having the opposite effect. Destroying them. It's making them more depressed than they've ever been. Because here we are on the backside of 50 plus years of this radical feminism in this country, and we're not seeing the exaltation of women. We're seeing the erasure of women. In fact, it's become so ludicrous and so damaging and so much of an erasure of women that we are having whole segments of our population, including grown adults, and as you know, even a Supreme Court justice, for crying out loud, can't even just tell us what a woman is. We're not asking them to explain the theory of relativity. We're just asking, what is a woman? And they can't. Are we living in a time and a place that is so absurd that we can't just even answer a simple question? We don't know what a woman is anymore? Being unable to define even who or what they are? And we're supposed to believe that's helping them? If we continue to let this nonsense invade the lives of women, then we're going to see more and more of them get trounced and trampled upon by hulking, testosterone-filled men playing dress-up out on the track field or the soccer field or the locker room. And if we continue to let the nonsense go and keep believing that the supposed answer is how can we make women more like men, instead of asking what can we do to truly help women be women, then we're going to continue to see this movement that supposedly is trying to empower and elevate and encourage women to flourish and thrive by doing what? By doing what, you say? We want them to flourish and thrive and empower by doing it? By making sure they never even draw their first breath, by aborting them by the millions? We scream women's rights and then make sure they never even come out of the womb? Internet personality Ali Stuckey once said this: ladies, if you're voting so that your daughter can murder your granddaughter, you are not voting for women's rights. No kidding. Someone asked me, Mark, why are you so against a woman's right to choose? I just asked him, why are you so against a woman's right to exist? If we let these feminists continue to propagate and cling to their illusions of supposed liberation for women, then we can expect more and more of our kids to be drugged into a local library or a schoolhouse or a community center to be told that the man that's dancing in front of them in a G-string and makeup is what a real woman actually is. Not their mother, not their grandma, not their sister, not their aunt. No, it's this clown. He's a real woman. This gyrating, sexual, deviant, cross-dressing freak show that's pretending to be a woman, that's a real woman. That's who you can aspire to. That's who can be your hero. Instead of real women. Somebody has got to have the courage to just simply say, enough is enough. This isn't helping. We've had enough. Author Carrie Gress, in her book, The End of Woman, she says, only a rediscovery of true womanhood can pull our society back from the brink. I, for one, would say that for all of the victims suffering from the effects of the feminist movement, I think Carrie's statements here are a welcoming voice of light in societal darkness. A lot of what we're reaping the harvest of had its nexus and origination all the way back in the 60s and 70s in the early feminist movement when it was pushing its agenda of free love, the abolition of the patriarchy, the breakdown of the nuclear family. They wanted unfettered immorality that would ultimately supposedly have no consequences, because if you did get pregnant because your contraception not working, don't worry, you can just have an abortion now. And a lot of the agenda that's being pushed and the ideology being espoused is very, very purposeful. They're doing it on purpose. The New York Post just released a bombshell report on October 23rd of this year from a Dr. Joanna Kennedy, where she refused to release the findings of a $10 million taxpayer-funded study on the effects of puberty blockers on our young children. You spent $10 million to find out if these hormones were actually beneficial for our kids, and when they found out that they're not, that all the data showed that they're not good for kids, they snuffed it. They hid it. Because they're doing it on purpose. Because the findings of the study showed unequivocally that there was zero evidence that puberty blockers actually improved any patient's mental health. When you stop and consider that one of the greatest attributes that God has ever given to woman, that I would say is distinctly different and complementary to those given to men, it's their uncanny and inherent ability to be psychological and spiritual mothers to their own offspring, and then also vicariously to other children outside of their own family as well. Think of the influence of an aunt, of a grandmother, of a sister, of a neighbor's wife on your kids. And you tell women that their real value has nothing whatsoever to do with their ability to be distinctly different than their male counterparts and their ability to be more nurturing and empathetic and caring and supportive and, dare we say again, motherly. Well, then you rob them of some of their greatest potentials and influences that they can have on their families and on their communities and on society. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? What's a good Christian supposed to do in the face of all this, and how should we respond? Are we supposed to hate people? Of course not. Of course not. Are we supposed to yell and scream at them, turn or burn, baby? Of course not. Are we supposed to thump them over the head with our Bibles and wag our fingers in their faces and castigate them on social media? Tell the whole world how horrible they are? Of course not. As we just saw in this video, we Christians, supposed lovers of Jesus, should be the first ones in society to extend a hand to these people. They're drowning in hopelessness. And they're not finding hope out of the world. They're being lied to. If you ask me, Christians should actually care enough about people who are hurting and suffering with depression or gender dysphoria or feelings of utter despair and hopelessness to do something about it. If you drove here to church this morning in your car and passed a guy on the side of the road that was so emaciated you could see all his bones and was starving to death, and you didn't pull over to feed him, shame on you. Christians should love people. But in the same way, if you drive to church in a morning knowing that somebody desperately needs some hope and some love, because they're messed up mentally and they're struggling and there's nobody there for them and you don't help them, shame on you. A guy named Archbishop Chaput once said, "Evil preaches tolerance until it is dominant, then it tries to silence good." And Christians should not let that happen. Christians shouldn't abdicate their responsibility to do good. Christians should speak what is good. Christians should participate in what is good. Christians, of all the people on the face of God's green earth, should have the courage to use their voices for the good of their fellow men and women. Christians should be joining with the chorus of other voices out there right now who are also willing to care enough to help these people restore their mental health and ultimately improve their lives and tell the world the truth. People like the American College of Pediatricians who have had the stones to come forward back in June of this year to declare something that should have been said a long, long time ago. They said, "We, the American College of Pediatricians," quote, "we have serious concerns about the physical and mental health effects of the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents in the United States who express discomfort with their biological sex. And that permanent physically altering surgery should not be based upon an individual's thoughts and feelings." And that is currently accepted as the best practice in treatment for gender dysphoria. But that's actually harmful for patients. People like the University of Wyoming women's volleyball team who are now refusing, along with 4 other universities, to play against other teams like San Jose State who have biological men on them. People like the psychology professor at the University of Louisville who openly opposed transgender surgeries for minors and got fired for it, but he refused to buckle and back down and won his lawsuit. Now he's got his job back. He used his voice for good. I know people hate him, but people like President Trump who just was reported yesterday as saying that he's going to be willing to work with Congress once he's in office to ban all transgender surgeries for all minors in the entire nation. Joined with a group of nearly 24 state attorneys general who are now openly warning the American Academy of Pediatrics that they may be breaking the law by continuing to recommend puberty blockers to children when they now know that there is substantial evidence showing that those drugs are actually causing those children physiological and psychological damage. Using your voice for good. Here's the deal. I know that Jesus ate and drank with sinners and publicans and tax collectors. But he didn't do that to appear inclusive or tolerant or to supposedly be some kind of social justice warrior. Jesus hung out with sinners. Jesus hung out with and continues to hang out with sinners like me and like them to transform us. Not to affirm our sin. Not to affirm our misguided ideologies. Not to affirm our make-believe world. We deny anatomy and basic human biology. And certainly not to affirm practices or principles that ultimately lead to our destruction. Jesus didn't hang out with sinners to affirm their lifestyles and made-up pronouns. He hung out with them to call them to a transformed life. Yeah. Not to continue in the kind of wrong-headed thinking that would ultimately destroy them. And if we call ourselves disciples of Christ or even Christ imitators, shouldn't we then be trying to act like Jesus? Shouldn't we then speak the same kinds of truth that Jesus spoke? Shouldn't we care and love and have enough empathy for others who are lost and broken and hurting, just like Jesus did? I say absolutely we should. Because if we don't, souls will continue to be lost. Lives will continue to be destroyed, and the world will continue to flounder around in darkness rather than actually find some truth and some supernatural light. If we don't do our job, if we don't fulfill our calling, then our inaction is action. Our failure to speak is speaking. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I get to heaven, I don't want God to look me in the face and ask me, Mark, why didn't you stink and say something? How could you let all these people be destroyed and ruined and kill themselves? You're too afraid to say something. I don't want that at all. I'm not okay with that. I hope you're not too. Let's pray. God, we just ask this morning that you would help us to do what is right. Father, that you would literally take us by the hand and guide us so that we would do what is right. God, not what we think or believe or suppose. God, not our personal opinions, not our own anecdotal experiences. God, not driven by our subjective predispositions and our upbringing, our environment, our things we've read or seen. God, just help us to see the real truth. Be able to look through all the fog, all the noise, all the lies of the enemy. See the truth. I keep thinking of that phrase, Lord, live not by lies. Father, if we would just have the courage to do that, to hear the lie, see it for what it is, and just say, I'm not going to follow it. I'm not going to believe it. I might lose friends. I might lose my position in my community. I might be called all kinds of nasty names. People might just literally hate me, but I'm not going to live by lies. I'm going to tell the truth. I suppose, Lord, at the end of the day, all we ask is that you would help us when we do that, to speak that truth with love. That we would act like Jesus, that we would not repel people, but we would receive them. You'd help us to build your kingdom, help us to change their lives, help us to bring them into a state of hope from their hopelessness, a state of joy from their position of just misery, a state of sound mind, God, snatched from a life of mental pain and suffering, confusion. Help us to have words of wisdom and acts of kindness, to be truly motivated by empathy and love. I thank you, God, for the men and women in this nation that have the courage already to stand up and just do what is right, to do what's actually best for our kids, and do what's best for our women. Help us be a light to the world as you intended us to be. We ask all this in your great name. Amen.
Amen.
Welcome to hang out and fellowship if you want. Certainly eat some more food if you like. You guys have a blessed Sunday. And if you have questions, you want to talk about things, please don't be afraid to ask me. Don't be afraid to call me. I'd love to sit and chat with you. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today that can be difficult, and I'd love to help you navigate those waters as best I can. You guys have a blessed Sunday.